Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ken and I am a counsellor helping men and women to get clarity on their relationships as well as to help them through quarter life and midlife crises. When it comes to this channel, however, I focus mostly on content for gay men and hoping to provide information to work through the challenges and difficulties that we face in our lives in order to have better connections with ourselves and with others. Now, for today's topic, I wanted to talk about, should I get back with my ex? I feel like this is a topic which is pretty universal depending on who you are, well, irrelevant of who you are, and it's something that I see a lot with my clients, and I wanted to give you my 2 cents on this and to also break down some of the things you should be thinking about prior to making this decision. And if this video is of any help, please like and subscribe, it greatly helps me out. And if you're looking for help on this particular challenge, you're always welcome to reach out to me by clicking the link below and booking in a session. So let's start with the basics. An ex. This can be someone who you've known for a little while based on a situationship where it wasn't official that you were in a relationship. That's one kind of ex. And then there is other kind of ex where it's someone who you have been with for a long period of time. Let's just say you've been in a relationship, you've gotten to know them for upwards of 12 months, and you've really been in an experience where you've seen the best of each other, the worst of each other, came to a conclusion that, you know, this isn't really something that you want to continue for whatever reason it may be. And now you're in that position where when you're away from them, you are starting to remember them fondly, even if they didn't have the best characteristics and you knew that there were reasons as to why you parted. But in that loneliness, you're starting to crave the connection that you had with them, and you're really not feeling good with where you're at right now. And so begins the question, should I go back to my ex? Okay, so I'm gonna get my personal opinion out of the way first, so that way I can just be done with it. Personally, as a gay white man who's been in situationships before, I personally don't love the idea of getting back with someone who's been in a situationship, because when you've been with someone who's been in an undecided relationship, usually that person hasn't really been in a position where they're ready to commit to a relationship. People who genuinely want to be in a relationship will be ready to move into a relationship. Now, whether they're good at a relationship is another entirely different matter. I'm talking about people who are like, oh yeah, let's just, go with the flow, see where things go. And they're not really in a position where they want to take any hard and fast actions on a relationship. They may even say to you at the end, oh, we're just friends. I don't understand what the big deal is. That is not someone who even has the willingness to want to be in a relationship. So to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't go back to someone like that. Now, if it was someone who I'd been in a relationship for longer than that, here's my 2 cents on that. If you've been with an ex for a significant period of time, you've really gotten to know the ins and outs of that situation within reason. You've gotten to see how that person tackles conflict, how they make you feel on a regular basis, and also how they treat you when times are tough for them too. It's those moments of difficulty and stress that really can shape your overall view of an individual and also help you better appreciate who they are rather than who they were at the beginning. We all show up very charming, attractive, and pretty in our first couple of dates, but when times get tough and we start to reveal the parts of us that we don't love, that's when we start to see the real person beneath the exterior of what we show everyone. And that's when things like mental health challenges, also chronic patterns of abuse can show up, or even just simply patterns of behavior which are just not that great. So with that out of the way, here's some things that I consider when it comes to the idea of getting back with someone to help me mentally tick a few boxes off before even contemplating going back to an ex. The first thing that I would ask myself is, what are my values and what are their values? Trust, consistency, also integrity. There are a few of the values that I have. Did they line up with that individual? And if not, what were some of the reasons why they didn't line up? If that person, for instance, took money from me, if they had an addiction that they didn't disclose, if they did things that put me at risk without informing me and also made me feel unsafe, they're violations of my values, and that may definitely cause me to feel like this is not something that I really want to go down again because we're clearly incompatible and I don't want that. Another key thing that I always ask myself is, how did I feel when I was with that person? And I'm not talking from the highs of sex to the chemistry and connection. I'm talking more about how did I feel with that person in terms of safety? Did I feel like I could approach them and talk to them about difficult things? Or did I feel like I was stepping on eggshells? Was I chronically worried about how I was going to be perceived if I was coming across as too needy or too naggy? Because if so, that's not really someone who I feel like I can have a safe, discussion with regards to the health and well-being of the relationship. And so I think it's really important to consider the fact that for many men, it's really important to think about, how did this individual respect me as an individual? Because I know for me personally, I don't like the idea of putting myself at risk if that person, for whatever good reasons they may have, puts me in a place of danger. And on that note of safety, it's important to understand if it was too safe of a relationship. Such a thing can exist where you're with someone who is amazing in being very compatible, kind, loving, unconditional love, appreciative, supportive. They know how to communicate with you, but you just don't love them. And I gotta be honest, that is a very common thing for a lot of people too. It's important to understand that you can have too much compatibility and too much safety, and you're just like, this is not what my soul needs. I'm sorry, I gotta back away. And it's important to understand that just because that person was very loving does not mean they were for you. It's very important to understand that just because someone presented with had healthy characteristics, it's important to understand that it's not healthy to maintain a relationship with someone who you don't love, because that's cheating yourself of the opportunity to be with someone who you can love. So that's really important to understand, that even if you've had a good experience with someone, it doesn't mean your heart was invested in it. Another thing that I often think about too, when I consider the question, should I get back with my ex, is also a question around difficult moments that happened and the core issues that broke us apart. For example, was it an issue of boundary violations? Was it an issue of trust? Was it an issue of, not feeling like you could communicate well with each other? It's important to isolate what those issues were and have conversations around that with your ex if you choose to go back with them. Because if you're not resolving the core things that broke you up in the last relationship, I'm sorry, but they're not gone. They're gonna approach themselves again. But it's also important to walk through your own stuff too. You need to identify your own responsibility in relation to what wasn't working too, because you can't just throw that back onto the other person. Yes, they have their stuff to work on, but if you take care of your side of the street, at least you've got yourself accounted for, because if they don't change, I'm sorry, it is what it is. Do you accept that? And with all that in mind, I think it's really important to have a level of acceptance around this too, which is what happens if this doesn't work out? If I go back with my ex and it's not really what I wanted it to be, I think it's good to come to a place of acceptance about appreciating the good that they have to offer, whilst also accepting the things that you don't like about them too. If you can accept that they don't have everything that you want and it works for you, amazing, more power to you. But if you've made changes and you're still not happy, you're really only left with one option, which is to leave. Unless you can accept them for who they are, I'm sorry, it's round two of the same situation, it's not gonna change. So that's an important thing to take in mind as well. And also think about for yourself, well, how am I gonna work through the discomfort of being lonely? And that's something I wanna talk about too, because part of the reason people feel compelled to go back with their exes is because naturally when you're with your ex or with your past partner, it was amazing from time to time, and now it feels like shit. So what do you do? It's really important to understand that when you leave a partner, no matter how terrible they may have been from time to time or how bad the experience was, it's gonna feel a little bit worse or more worse when you're away from them, because you're no longer getting the sexual intimacy. You're also now dealing with the withdrawal from being out of that relationship, which also comes with a lot of grief, the heartbreak, which is a depression overload, and also you've lost a sense of identity, because when you're with that person, you also shared an identity with the relationship. Being heartbroken and being out of a relationship often feels far worse than it did when you were in a bad relationship. And that's why it's really important to sit with that discomfort and to let it pass through you. If you don't, it can make the temptation to go back with an ex even greater. And maybe it'll work out, maybe you'll be back to square one, but if you can't deal with the discomfort of being alone and away from your partner, that's a serious thing to contemplate and work through. Now, with that all being said, I want to say something which is going to sound a little bit twisted in light of everything that I just said. If you want to go back to your ex, my professional opinion is go for it. Seriously, go for it. Check it out. Find out if it's for you. People have to walk through fire in order to understand whether or not the thing that they think they want is actually for them. And I'm not saying that in a place of cruelty, being like, get hurt. It's not about that. It's about learning for yourself and gaining that necessary intuitive information for yourself to understand, is this something that aligns with me and is serving me as a human being, is allowing me to grow and expand, or is this causing me harm and also severe pain? Am I allowing the idea of potential to get away with me, or do I genuinely believe we can make this work? These are questions that need to be answered by you, and sometimes the only way to answer those questions is either in isolation by working through the discomfort of being alone, or by going back and making those decisions for yourself. Overall, and to wrap this episode up, I think the key thing that I want to express is that it's very understandable for people to want to get back with an ex, and I totally get it, and I understand where it comes from. It's also really important to understand that for many people, personally, in my opinion, I don't think they should go back to their ex, and I worry for their safety and well-being. That being said, I also have trust that people will come to realize what's actually right for them by making decisions for themselves. And even if it may not be quote unquote the best thing to do, maybe that's something they need to figure out on their own, and just allowing them to do that. I'm not endorsing domestic violence. I'm not endorsing abuse of any kind. It's just about allowing a person to realize what's healthy for them, and trying to chastise a person for not knowing any better is not helping. So with that all being said, I hope this video has been practical and helpful. If it did, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. And like I said, if you're looking for support on issues like this, feel free to just apply to book a session with me with the link below. Bye for now.